The starfish of last resort. The Stella Maris had never been meant to fight. Its hull was a mosaic of salvaged habitat domes, medical modules, and cryovaults, all clamped to a central truss like beads on a beggar's necklace. No cannons, no armor, just the white dove of the Interstellar Medical Corps painted across its flank, visible for 1,000,000 kilometers. Dr. Kalen Voss stood in the observation blister, watching nebulae bleed across the dark. Behind him, the ship breathed, 2,100 souls. Refugees from the Ganymede fires. Children with radiation sickness from a colony's ship's failed shielding. A Cetian ambassador in medically induced coma after an assassination attempt. 11 species. One oath. First, do no harm. He pressed his forehead to the cold glass. 3 weeks from the nearest relay. The Hippocratic Code felt less like a guideline and more like a noose. Dr. Voss. A voice in his earpiece. Long-range contact. Unidentified. His stomach turned to ice. I'm on my way. The bridge was a storm of red light. Captain Thorne Vasquez loomed over the tactical table, his scarred jaw tight. Lieutenant Mirison stood at sensors, her hands flying across haptic displays. Range. Vasquez barked. 300,000 kilometers and closing. Velocity, 11% light speed. Identify. Myra's voice dropped. Captain, that's a Ravager-class Dreadnought. No transponder. No hails. The word hung like a death sentence. Ravagers. Not pirates, worse. Slavers who stripped ships for organic cargo, who sold children to mining colonies and turned adults into neural slaves. Open a channel, Vasquez said. All frequencies. Identify us as a medical vessel. Protected. The Stella Maris shuddered. Lights flickered. Alarm screamed. Missile impact on Section 4, Mira reported. Hull breach. Casualties unknown. Medical Bay 2 is gone. Another impact. The deck lurched. Voss grabbed the captain's chair. We need to run, Voss said. Run where? We top out at 0.4 C. That Dreadnought could catch us in an hour. A third impact. Then a voice filled the bridge, synthesized, flat, utterly inhuman. Medical vessel Stella Maris. You carry high-value biological cargo. Surrender in 30 seconds, or we vent every compartment. Voss felt the words like a blade. High-value biological cargo. They meant patients. They meant slaves. They'll harvest organs, Voss whispered. Captain, we can't. Vasquez's eyes met his. I know. Silence. Then Lieutenant Sun spoke. Sir, we have one asset. The debris clearing system. The mass driver. That's a glorified trash launcher. It's a railgun, Sun interrupted. Electromagnetic coils. Tungsten slugs. If we overcharge it, then the rails melt. A new voice. From the back of the bridge. A woman in grease-stained coveralls, welding goggles around her neck, tools hanging from every pocket. Ravager. Debris technician. No rank. No authority. Just a scavenger who'd survived the Belt Wars and now spent her days clearing ice from docking ports. She stepped forward. The fusion reactor. If we reroute the entire output through the capacitors, bypass every safety, we could accelerate a slug to 20% light speed. Vasquez stared. That would crack the spine. Melt the barrel. We'd get one shot. One's all we need, sir. And if you miss? Alara smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Then we die knowing we tried. Voss felt something cold settle in his chest. He looked at the tactical display. The Ravager Dreadnought closing like a tumor, boarding pods already detaching from its flanks. 2,100 lives. Depending on him. On all of them. First, do no harm. But harm was already here. Harm had a name. Harm had guns. Do it, Voss said. Vasquez glanced at him. Doctor. I said do it. Voss's voice rang like a bell. We're not cargo. We're not victims. And I'll be damned if I let those butchers turn my patients into currency. The captain nodded slowly. Ms. Zhou, you have 20 minutes. Alara grinned. Wild, terrible, beautiful. Yes, sir. And the Stella Maris, unarmed and unarmored, began to bare its teeth. The Starfish of Last Resort, Part 2. Alara Zhou had been a welder before she'd been a soldier, and a soldier before she'd become a ghost. Somewhere between the Belt Wars and the Stella Maris, she'd buried that part of herself. Now it clawed its way back. She sprinted through maintenance crawlways, magnetic boots clanging, dragging a plasma cutter and a toolkit that weighed more than her conscience. Behind her, 2 junior engineers fought to keep up. Dex, a lanky kid from Ceres with panic in his eyes, and SOV, a hulking Jovian whose augments could punch through bulkheads. "Joe, wait up." Dex gasped. "Where are we even going?" "Reactor control. Deck 12. That's restricted." "Not anymore." She skidded around a corner, nearly colliding with a medical team rushing the opposite direction. Someone shouted. She didn't stop. The Stella Maris groaned. Another impact. Distant, muffled, wrong. Somewhere, someone was screaming. Asterisk focus. One problem at a time. Asterisk. They reached the reactor chamber in 4 minutes. Alara slapped her palm against the access panel. Red. Denied. She swore, jammed a bypass shunt into the port, and the door hissed open. Inside, the fusion reactor pulsed like a captured star. Magnetic containment shimmered blue-white, holding back temperatures that could vaporize stone. Alara had seen reactors before. Never like this. Never with the safeties offline and output spiking into blood-red territory. SOV, capacitor array. Now, Dex, coolant from the medical bays. All of it. But the patients. They'll die in 20 minutes if we don't do this. Move. Dex ran. Alara turned to the primary console, fingers flying. The debris-clearing system wasn't designed for combat. It was a glorified slingshot. But the principles were sound. Accelerate mass. Transfer energy. Point. Shoot. Simple. Except nothing was simple. The power requirements would drain the reactor dry. If the magnetic bottle destabilized, even a fraction, the explosion would turn the Stella Maris into a second sun. Joe. SOV's voice boomed. Capacitors are live. Breakers are screaming at 200% tolerance. Take them to 300. That's insane. I know. She didn't look up. Her hands were shaking. When had they started shaking? Trust me, SOV. Just trust me. The Jovian stared. Then slowly, he nodded. 20 decks above, Captain Vasquez watched the external feed. The Ravager Dreadnought. Asterisk Grief Eater asterisk. Its transponder now screamed. Loomed larger with every second. Boarding pods detached from its flanks like metal spores. 10 pods inbound, Mira reported. ETA 4 minutes. Can we target them? Not with the main gun. Too small, too fast. Then we wait. Dr. Voss appeared at his shoulder, still in surgical scrubs, navy blue splattered with something dark. How's Joe doing? Don't know. Comms are spotty. A proximity alarm blared. One of the boarding pods slammed into the lower hull. Cutting torches flared. They're in, Mira said. Alara heard the breach alarm and felt her stomach drop. Asterisk not yet. Just a few more minutes. Asterisk. Dex, status. Coolant's online. But Joe, the temperature curve. If we fire, the barrel will melt. Doesn't matter. One shot. Remember? What about us? We're sitting 20 meters from an overcharged reactor. She finally looked at him. Dex's face was pale, eyes wide, but his hands were steady on the console. A professional. Good. If we don't fire, Alara said quietly, the Ravagers will kill everyone on this ship, including us. So we fire. And we pray. He swallowed. Nodded. The reactor's hum deepened, resonating in her teeth. Containment flickered once, twice, then stabilized. On the readout, power climbed past 300%. 350. 400. Joe, SOV's voice crackled. I don't know how much more the coils can take. Just hold it together. An explosion rocked the ship. Over the intercom, someone was shouting about hull breaches, about Ravagers in the corridors, about. Captain Vasquez's voice cut through the chaos. We have a problem. Alara's blood ran cold. What now? The Cetian ambassador. She's awake. And she says she knows how to blind them. Part 3. In the medical bay, Dr. Kaylin Voss stared at the Cetian ambassador. Her 6 multifaceted eyes gleamed like cut gems, her chitinous skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns. She had been in an induced coma for 3 weeks. Now she was awake, strapped to the gurney, mandibles clicking with urgent purpose. The Grief Eater, the ambassador said through a translator bot. I served aboard it. Before I escaped. Voss leaned closer. You were a slave? Engineer. Their sensor array is thermal only. Blind to electromagnetic radiation. The Cetian's antennae twitched. If you cloak your heat signature, they cannot see you at all. Voss's breath caught. He grabbed his comm. Captain, shut down life support. Everything non-essential. Make us invisible. Vasquez's voice came back sharp. Doctor, people will freeze. Not before we fire. A pause. Then, understood. The Stella Maris went dark. In the sudden cold and silence, the ship became a tomb. Life support sputtered offline. Gravity flickered. Frost crept across bulkheads like skeletal fingers. 2,100 souls held their breath. Alara Jo stood in the gunnery control room, hands locked on the targeting console. Through the external feed, she saw the Grief Eater, a monstrous silhouette backlit by distant starlight, bristling with weapons that could crack moons. It hung there, 200,000 kilometers away, utterly still. Waiting. Range holding steady. Myra's voice crackled. They've stopped accelerating. I think they're scanning for us. Let them look. Alara's breath plumed white. Temperature had dropped below freezing. Her fingers ached. They won't find ghosts. Behind her, Dex and SOV huddled near the reactor controls, watching the power readout climb. 500%. 550. 600. The magnetic containment screamed, oscillating wildly, held together by prayer and spite. Joe, SOV said slowly. If this thing goes critical, it won't. And if it does? She glanced back, grinning like a madwoman. Then we die famous. The ship shuddered. Another boarding pod latched onto the hull. Alara heard the distant screech of cutting torches, the rattle of boots on metal. The Ravagers were inside now, carving through decks, hunting for the crew. Asterisk not yet. Just a few more seconds. Asterisk. On the bridge, Vasquez watched the tactical display. The Grief Eater hadn't moved. Its weapons were armed, charged, ready, but it wasn't firing. Searching. Confused. Voss, the captain said quietly. Seal all blast doors on decks 3 through 6. Vent the compartments. The doctor hesitated. Captain, there are civilians. Do it. Voss's fingers moved. Somewhere in the ship, airlocks opened. Screams cut short. Silence rushed back in. Vasquez closed his eyes. Forgive me. Alara heard the venting. She didn't react. Couldn't afford to. The targeting solution was everything now. The Grief Eater was massive, but space was bigger. A fraction of a degree error, and the shot would sail past into the void. No pressure, Dex whispered. Reactor at 650. Joe, the containment bottle is failing. We have maybe 20 seconds before. That's 20 seconds more than I need. She locked the targeting reticle on the Dreadnought's midsection, where the Cetian had said the sensor array clustered. One blind spot. One chance. SOV. Transfer all power to the capacitors. Everything. The Jovian slammed his augmented fist down on the override. The lights died. The reactor howled, a sound like stars collapsing. Every joule of energy in the Stella Maris funneled into the debris-clearing gun. The railgun woke up. Electromagnetic coils ignited along the 12-meter barrel, glowing cherry red, then white-hot, then beyond visible spectrum. Inside the breach, a single tungsten slug, 200 kilograms of dense, murderous metal, hung suspended in fields that could flatten mountains. Alara's finger hovered over the firing stud. Her heart hammered. Her vision narrowed. First, do no harm. But sometimes harm was mercy. She pressed the button. The universe screamed. Part 4. The railgun did not fire with sound. It fired with light. Electromagnetic forces ripped the tungsten slug forward, 0 to 20% light speed in less than a heartbeat. The barrel vaporized, exploded in a plume of superheated metal. The Stella Maris' spine cracked like a broken rib, twisting under forces it was never meant to withstand. And the slug flew, 200,000 kilometers in 1 second. From the bridge, Vasquez watched the external feed. He saw the Grief Eater hanging there, arrogant and invincible. Saw its weapons charging. Saw impact. The Dreadnought did not explode. It unraveled. The tungsten slug punched through the hull at relativistic velocity, transferring kinetic energy equivalent to a small nuclear warhead. Armor boiled. Metal vaporized. The ship folded inward on itself, crumpling like paper in a fist, and then nothing. Just debris. Just dust. Just silence. Mira stared at her screens. My God. Vasquez exhaled. He hadn't realized he'd been holding his breath. Damage report. Dorsal spine compromised. Reactor offline. Life support offline. Myra's voice cracked. Captain, we're drifting. But we're alive. Alara woke to pain. Her ribs were broken, at least 3, maybe more. Her left arm hung useless. Blood dripped from somewhere above her eye. She didn't care. Dex was pulling her upright, shouting something she couldn't hear. SOV stood nearby, laughing. Actually laughing. Tears streaming down his soot-blackened face. "We did it," the Jovian said. "Holy shit, Joe. We did it." Alara nodded weakly. "Told you. One shot." Then she looked past them, through the cracked viewport, and her blood turned to ice. The debris field where the Grief Eater had been was moving. Not drifting, asterisk moving star. Chunks of wreckage were converging, pulling together, fusing with a low-frequency hum that vibrated through the hull. "Captain," Alara whispered into her comm, "tell me you're seeing this." A long pause. Then Vasquez's voice, barely controlled. "We see it." The debris wasn't random. It was rebuilding. Something inside the wreckage was still alive, something that had survived a relativistic kill shot. Something that was now knitting itself back together, piece by piece, like a starfish regrowing a lost arm. Dex backed away from the viewport. What the hell was that ship? The comm crackled. The Cetian ambassador's voice came through, thin and terrified. "I tried to warn you. The Grief Eater is not a ship. It is a symbiote. The Ravagers did not build it. They fed it. And it does not die easily." Outside, the debris finished coalescing. A new shape emerged, smaller than before, damaged, but unmistakably whole. And it was turning toward them. Vasquez said quietly. "We have no railgun, no power, no life support. What do we have left?" The doctor looked at the ambassador. The Cetian's 6 eyes gleamed with ancient terror. "One more chance," Voss said. "And it's not a weapon." Part 5. "What do you mean, not a weapon?" Vasquez's voice was raw. Voss knelt beside the Cetian ambassador. Her bioluminescent patterns had shifted. No longer the slow pulse of healing, but a rapid, urgent strobing. "Fear. The Grief Eater is a parasite," the ambassador said. "It bonds with its crew, feeds on their neural energy. That's why it survived. The Ravagers inside are still connected to it, still screaming. Then how do we kill it?" "You don't." Her mandibles clicked. "You starve it." Alara heard the words through her cracked comm and felt something click into place. "Starve it. Cut off its food." The Ravagers inside, still alive, still connected, were the Dreadnought's power source. Its heart. "The ambassador's right," Alara said, pushing herself upright despite the pain. "We can't outgun it, but we can break the link." "How?" Vasquez demanded. Alara looked at SOV. At Dex. At the ruined reactor controls. "Broadcast," she said. "On every frequency. The Ravager's own neural signatures. If we can scramble them, create feedback, the symbiote will disconnect to protect itself." "That's insane," Voss said. "We don't have their signatures. We don't have the bandwidth. We don't have." "Yes, we do." The ambassador raised a trembling claw. "I was connected to it for 6 years. I am their signature." The Grief Eater had finished rebuilding. It was smaller now, a jagged core of fused metal and organic pulp, but it was moving, accelerating toward the Stella Maris with hungry purpose. On the bridge, Voss wired the ambassador directly into the ship's damaged comm array. SOV jury-rigged power from the last dying batteries. Dex held Alara upright as she worked the console, fingers bleeding, eyes burning. "You have 30 seconds before it's in weapons range," Mira reported. "Plenty of time," Alara lied. The ambassador closed her 6 eyes. Her chitinous skin began to glow, not the usual bioluminescence, but something deeper, something that made the air hum and Voss's teeth ache. "I am broadcasting," the ambassador whispered. "They hear me. They remember me." On the external feed, the Grief Eater shuddered. Its perfect acceleration wavered. Chunks of debris began to slough off, not exploding, just releasing, like a fist unclenching. "What's happening?" Vasquez breathed. "I am showing them," the ambassador said, "that they do not have to feed, that they can let go." The Dreadnought stopped moving. For 10 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, slowly, gracefully, like a dying star surrendering to gravity, the Grief Eater began to come apart. Not in violence. In peace. Sections drifted away, dark and silent. The organic threads connecting them dissolved into space. Inside the bridge, the ambassador opened her eyes. "It's done," she said. "They chose to starve." 3 hours later, a Terran frigate arrived. The Stella Maris was crippled, frozen, barely breathing, but alive. 2,100 souls rescued. No casualties except the enemy that had chosen to end itself. Dr. Kalen Voss stood in the observation blister once more, watching rescue lights blink across the dark. Behind him, patients slept in heated wards. Engineers worked. Life continued. Captain Vasquez joined him. They're calling us heroes. We're not heroes, Voss said quietly. We're survivors. Isn't that the same thing? Voss smiled. Maybe. Outside, the debris of the Grief Eater drifted away. A warning, a memory, a strange and terrible mercy. The Stella Maris, unarmed and unarmored, drifted peacefully through the void. Until the next signal came. End of Part 5. The story is complete unless you request otherwise. The Starfish of Last Resort, Epilogue. 7 days later, the Stella Maris limped into port at Titan Station. The docking bay was packed. News crews, medical officials, families of the rescued, weeping and laughing and clutching each other. But when the main airlock hissed open, no one stepped out. Instead, a single transmission broadcast across all channels. It showed Dr. Kalen Voss standing on the bridge, still in his surgical scrubs, still stained with things that would never wash clean. Beside him stood Captain Thorne Vasquez, scarred jaw set, eyes tired. Behind them, Elara Jo leaned on a crutch, her arm in a sling, her welding goggles still around her neck. Voss spoke first. 2,100 souls came aboard our ship. 2,100 souls are going home. That is not a miracle. That is not heroism. That is simply what it means to be human, or Cetian, or Jovian, or anything else that bleeds and hopes and refuses to become cargo. He paused. The Grief Eater is gone. But there are others out there. Other parasites. Other hungers. We did not win because we had better weapons. We won because a woman who had been a slave for 6 years chose to forgive her captors and showed them that they could forgive themselves. The ambassador stepped into frame. Her 6 eyes gleamed, wet with something that might have been tears. I did not destroy them, she said softly. I woke them up, and they chose to stop. The doc fell silent. Then Elara Jo limped forward and grinned. That wild, terrible, beautiful grin. If anyone needs us, she said, we'll be in dry dock for the next 6 months. But after that, she shrugged. The void is wide, and mercy has teeth. The transmission ended. In the weeks that followed, the Stella Maris became a symbol, not of war, but of something rarer. A hospital ship that had refused to die. A crew that had refused to break. A parasite that had chosen peace over hunger. Captain Vasquez retired. Dr. Voss opened a free clinic on Ceres. The ambassador returned to Cetian space as a diplomat, preaching a gospel of waking, not killing. And Elara Jo? She stayed on the Stella Maris. Rebuilt the railgun. Added safeties this time, just in case. One night, she stood in the observation blister, watching the stars drift past in their ancient silence. Dex found her there, holding 2 cups of terrible station coffee. You ever think about what happened out there? He asked. Every day. You ever think it'll happen again? She took the coffee, sipped, smiled. Probably. Outside, the void stretched endless and dark. Somewhere out there, other ships drifted. Other hungers waited. Other mercies slept. But tonight, the Stella Maris was safe. Tonight, 2,100 souls were warm. And that was enough. The end.